I wish you to understand clearly what we are attempting to do, and that is to strike against those who are getting rich by breaking the law, against the big boy, if you like the term.
175,000 gallons of real honest-to-goodness brew is being sent into the gutters of Newark, right when the hot weather is on us, too. Here 100 bullets crashed when the raiding party thought they had the gunman and his gang trapped.
How did this famous gangster treat you?
He treated me wonderful, kind and lovable. I wouldn't know a gunman if I saw one.
Boom, 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 boom. The automatic shotguns. The man on the steering wheel side shot the man in front. The one on the other side shot the man in the rear.
The 18th Amendment has delivered this nation bound hand and foot to organized crime.
My advice is for criminals to pack up and leave or prepare to stay for a long time under restraint.
Once the alliance between criminals and politicians is smashed, racketeering will come to a prompt end.
By common effort and united action, we must once again make America safe for its people.
For the Statue of Liberty, poet Emma Lazarus writes, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Between 1900 and 1910, more than 9 million immigrants arrive in New York. In 1907 alone, more than 1 million people are herded through the main processing facility at Ellis Island in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty. Her lamp is their beacon of hope. But for many, it burns low. 9-year-old Salvatore Lucania, better known as Charlie Luciano, arrives from Sicily in 1907. 9-year-old Meyer Shukalansky, shortened soon to Lansky, arrives from Polish Russia in 1911. Benjamin Siegel is born in 1906 to parents recently arrived from Eastern Europe. Luciano and other children see their parents grow old too soon, laboring for $12 a week in sweatshops or slaughterhouses and returning home to vermin-infested slums called Jewtown, Irish Hell's Kitchen, or Little Italy. Adding to the misery of the struggling immigrants is the presence of old-world criminal traditions. Since the 1890s, gangs or families of the secret Sicilian crime cartel known as the Mafia terrorize Italian immigrants in ethnic neighborhoods. While some immigrants organize fraternal brotherhoods or unions to improve conditions, others grow increasingly bitter. Luciano and other young toughs find self-esteem and easy cash in perverse brotherhoods of their own. Scorning the honest but less profitable path of their parents, the boys join street gangs of Italians, Irish, and Jews. They fight for territorial rights to steal, rob warehouses, and extort protection money from terrorized merchants. Luciano, Lansky, and Siegel meet in battle, then join together for business. Unlike other gangs tied to ethnic loyalties, Luciano's outfit breaks old world cultural boundaries and recruits members based on criminal talent rather than ethnic background. From the 104th Street Gang, Luciano recruits Frank Costello, an 1894 immigrant from Italy. As Luciano recalls, "We was the best team that ever got put together. We knew our jobs better than any other guys on the street. We was like the four horsemen of Notre Dame, except what would two Jewish guys be doing at Notre Dame?" From the 5 Points Gang, Luciano occasionally employs Alphonse Capone. Barely literate, with a 4th grade education, Capone is a graduate only of street warfare. Luciano's team and similar outfits elsewhere of young Americanized immigrant gangsters hunger for the chance to expand business beyond ethnic boundaries. In 1920, the land of opportunity gives it to them. It is the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, and it is called prohibition. The ban on liquor production, sale, and consumption in the United States. But after the horrors of World War I, many are not in the mood to quit drinking. Quite the opposite. And this mood is not lost on those who see it as the biggest opportunity to make money ever offered to criminals. Like hundreds of gangs nationwide, Luciano's outfit gets into the whiskey business. At first, liquor is smuggled in by truck from Canada. The front for the shipping is the auto and truck rental firm opened by Lansky and Siegel, who recruits fearless armed drivers such as Mo Sedway and Red Levine. But Luciano's outfit remains little more than a street gang on wheels. In 1921, a criminal mastermind arrives who hones the operation into a bigger business. He is Arnold Rothstein, a shadowy millionaire gambler and loan shark known along Broadway simply as AR or Mr. Big. He is the suave master of the fix at City Hall. He treats bootlegging as big business. He preaches nonviolence, tasteful fashion, and avoidance of publicity. Luciano's outfit listens and profits. Luciano learns to dress well and acquires the manners to service posh speakeasies in Manhattan. Lansky and Siegel, as the Bug and Meyer Combine, expand armed transportation into a profitable business for hire to any bootlegger. And Costello puts money in the right political palms at City Hall. He learns from the master. Some say Rothstein fixed the 1919 World Series. While the outfit as a whole relies on bootlegging, individual members expand into other criminal activities. Luciano develops loan sharking. Siegel, a high-stakes floating crap game. Costello, slot machines at speakeasies. And Lansky, gambling for the poor. He invents a numbers racket called Policy, a lottery based on pennies, nickels, and dimes that nets millions. While Rothstein grooms Luciano and company in criminal understatement, one of their former colleagues provides a study in contrast. Al Capone avoids a murder charge in 1919 by fleeing to Chicago. Luciano pays his way and lands Capone a job as bodyguard for Chicago gang leader Johnny Torrio. Since 1911, Torrio has built up the brothel and rackets empire of his uncle, Big Jim Colosimo. Big Jim has run Chicago Vice for over 20 years. He rejects Torrio's plan to expand into bootlegging. Capone resolves the conflict in his own brutal style. Al Capone kills Colosimo on May 11, 1920, in the lobby of Big Jim's popular restaurant, the front for his crime empire. Colosimo's death is front-page news. He enjoys the first of the huge gangland funerals that marked the 1920s. Johnny Torrio takes over his uncle's boomtime rackets, now worth millions. Torrio cuts Capone in for 25% the day after the funeral. Torrio forges a peace among a dozen Irish, Italian, and Slavic gangs battling over Chicago's bootleg booze. For over 4 years, he and Capone rake in $70 million a year. They look to double that amount by taking over the one area they don't control, the Irish North Side. Leader of the Irish gangs is Dion Deany O'Banion, who runs a flower shop called Schofield's as his front. He operates 2 distilleries on the North Side. Capone wants them. Shortly after noon, November 10th, 1924, 3 Capone gunmen arrive at the shop. One clasps the hand of O'Banion. The other 2 fire. He is dead before he falls into his chrysanthemums. The first victim of what becomes known as the Sicilian Handshake. More than 15,000 attend his funeral at Mount Carmel Cemetery. Flowers worth $50,000 arrive in 26 trucks. One small wreath simply says, "From Al." Johnny Torrio sees the profitable peace he forged between rival gangs being buried as well. By killing O'Banion, Capone unleashes a bloodbath. It washes across Chicago and cleanses the city of more than 400 gangsters a year until 1929. Torrio is gunned down in 1925 but survives and wears a silk scarf to cover gaping wounds in his throat. Before leaving for Italy, he turns over his empire to Capone. Soon the name Scarface Al Capone becomes synonymous in the national media with crime, bootlegging, murder, and Chicago. But his most infamous criminal act is yet to come. In February 1929, Capone okays a plan proposed by his top gunner, Machine Gun Jack McGurn, to finish the Irish by killing their only surviving leader, Bugs Moran. Acting on a tip that Moran is at his Clark Street garage, Capone's gangsters, posing as police, stage a raid. Six Moran men and an innocent optometrist are executed. But Moran never shows up. A lonely dog's howling triggers discovery of the bodies. Outrage over the butchery ignites nationwide. Only Capone kills like this, says Moran. Capone is perceived as the king of crime. Certainly the press has crowned him as such. His pronouncements are spread across America. Everybody calls me a racketeer, he says. I call myself a businessman. When I sell liquor, it's bootlegging. When my patrons serve it on a silver tray on Lakeshore Drive, it's hospitality. While Capone grabs the headlines with his brutal excesses, the outfit left behind in New York has grown quietly, like a cancer. By May 1929, Rothstein is killed in a poker game. But Luciano's outfit has risen from the streets to suites in the Waldorf Astoria. They coordinate bootleg shipments for gangs in 22 cities, and they have stayed out of the papers. Like any businessmen, they now must plan for changes in the marketplace. Luciano and Lansky agree that a national meeting must be held. Gangsters from 25 cities convene May 13th in Atlantic City at the President Hotel. Conspicuous by their absence, however, are the old world mafia dons or mustache Petes. Despite that, some consider this the constitutional convention of the mob. For fear of being overheard, most sessions are held in bare feet with trouser legs rolled up, walking amid crowds at the beach. They agree to develop and expand gambling as an illegal enterprise. Part of their funds are designated for the creation of a national wire service for horse racing. But the big question remains, what happens after Prohibition? They decide that when the dry era ends, they will remain in control of the booze empire. Funds are set aside to buy breweries and distilleries to be legitimate. But by the time the gangsters pile back into their limousines to leave on May 16th, legitimate business in America is about to receive its biggest blow. On October 29, 1929, the stock market crashes. In one day, the decade-long boom of the Roaring Twenties ends and the desperate years of the Great Depression begin. even for the bootlegger. Luciano observes, one day everybody was buying cases of booze, and the next day they was glad to have enough dough to buy a pint. But in the crisis, Meyer Lansky sees an opportunity. He advises the outfit, hold on to the cash. When the bottom falls out of the market, the whole country's going to need money, and they'll pay through the nose for it. Lansky proves a prophet. Luciano pushes loan sharking, and soon the entire garment district is owned by the outfit. The numbers, or policy game, skyrockets as people gamble their last dime on a chance to make more. Costello's slot machines swallow more nickels, dimes, and quarters than ever before, and the nationwide betting syndicate underwritten at the Atlantic City Conference flourishes. The peace forged in Atlantic City, however, now proving so profitable, is threatened by a mafia war. Self-proclaimed mafia boss of bosses in New York is Giuseppe Mazzeria, an 1890 immigrant from Sicily. He is rude, crude, and merciless. His rival is Salvatore Mananzano, a Sicilian immigrant from the town of Casalmari. A former student of the priesthood, he reads Caesar's Gallic Wars in Latin. Over 6 months, 67 gangsters die in the streets. Luciano fears that publicity from open warfare will force official action against his outfit as it had with Capone's. All of us younger guys hated the old mustaches and what they was doing, Luciano says. We was trying to build a business that moved with the times. The old guys and their ideas had to go. On April 15, 1931, Luciano ends the war by inviting Mazzeria to lunch at Scarpato's restaurant on Coney Island. In the middle of the meal, Luciano excuses himself for the toilet. Bugsy Siegel, Joe Adonis, Albert Anastasia, and Vito Genovese walk in and shoot Mazzeria. When police arrive, Luciano is alone. They ask why he didn't see the murderers. He replies, "I was in the can taking a leak. I always take long leaks." But the peace is only half won, with Mafia Don Mananzaro still alive. On September 10th, 1931, 4 men posing as Internal Revenue Service agents gain entrance to Mananzano's headquarters on Park Avenue. Mananzano dies of 4 bullet wounds and 6 knife wounds. The 4 agents are Bugsy Siegel, Albert Anastasia, Red Levine, and Thomas Lucchese. Now Luciano's outfit has no rival. For us, he says, rubbing out a mustache was just like making way for a new building, like we was in the construction business. In the autumn of 1931, at the Congress Hotel in Chicago, Luciano holds his second national meeting to consolidate power. Capone is the host. Luciano and Lansky promote diversification in their new national syndicate of crime. As Luciano establishes himself as leader of the underworld, national events conspire once again to alter the course of his syndicate.
The Women's Organization for National Prohibition Reform comes to ask you to consider seriously the question of the repeal of the 18th Amendment. It's no longer a question of liquor or no liquor. It's a question of racketeers or no racketeers. We believe that the 18th Amendment has failed, and failed badly.
The year is 1932. America has a new leader. President Franklin D. Roosevelt promises a new deal to fight the Depression, and he launches his administration with repeal of prohibition.
And I am confident that the United States of America wants repeal.
While the nation celebrates, Luciano's outfit capitalizes on the mood. Gambling, legitimate liquor, and trucking operations mushroom. Like a virus digging deeper into the body national, the syndicate thrives as the nation's attention is diverted elsewhere. The Great Depression spawns a series of sensational, if brief, Midwest bank robbers and murderers. With flamboyant names like Pretty Boy Floyd, Babyface Nelson, Machine Gun Kelly, and Ma Barker and her boys, they roar through the countryside, robbing banks and kidnapping. They kill anyone who gets in the way. Bloodiest among the bandits are Bonnie and Clyde, the gang of Clyde Barrow, his brother Buck and wife Blanche, and Clyde's girlfriend, Bonnie Parker. She writes poetry about their 21-month spree. They rob a dozen banks, gas stations, and stores, and kill 12 people in the process. She writes, "Someday they will go down together, and they will bury them side by side. To a few, it means grief. To the law, it's relief. But it's death to Bonnie and Clyde." In an Iowa shootout, Buck Barrow dies and his wife is captured. Wounded, Bonnie and Clyde flee to Louisiana. They are killed from ambush in a hail of gunfire by Texas Ranger Frank Hamer and his posse. The bodies are photographed, dead, in the front seat of their car. Each is riddled by 50 of the 187 bullets fired. The Federal Bureau of Investigation under J. Edgar Hoover eliminates the bandit scourge. One by one, they are captured or killed. Theater newsreels parade the grisly results in what amounts to public hangings via celluloid.
For 3 years, G-men have been scouring the country, determined to wipe out the lust of the notorious Carpus Barker gang. They've been on the Carpus trail many times, and they just missed him when they shot it out with the Barkers in Florida.
This is the 100-shot machine gun used by Ma Barker against a federal man in the raid.
But the king of the outlaws keeps eluding Hoover.
Bad man Dillinger, free once again after a
Clever, literate, and fearless, he holds the national media spellbound with a string of daring bank robberies.
A regular walking arsenal was maintained for days, and the bad man seemed securely held. But he got out with a little toy weapon, something like this: a phony gun made of wood and a safety razor.
Radio and theater newsreels lend a melodramatic flair to Dillinger's career. By mid-July 1934, Dillinger hides in a Chicago rooming house under the nose of FBI agent Melvin Purvis. Dillinger enjoys a string of young women over the years drawn to this flamboyant bad boy. Among them are Polly Hamilton Keel, ex-wife of a Chicago policeman, and Anna Sage, a local bordello madam. On July 22, 1934, he leaves his rooming house to accompany them both to the Biograph Theater. Unknown to Dillinger, Sage has struck a deal with FBI agent Purvis. The threesome leaves the Biograph arm in arm. As they walk down the street, the two women fall behind. 9 agents under Purvis surround Dillinger in front of an alley. Dillinger pulls his pistol. The man pegged public enemy number 1 by Hoover is dead. Public attention now returns to the growing criminal underworld, even though Hoover has denied it exists. Anti-crime candidates are elected in a wave of reform.
We intend to have a general house cleaning. Yes, we'll not only clean the streets of this city, but I'm going to clean every department of every grafting Tammany politician and appoint honest men and women in their places.
Old ways of corruption fall victim to a new era. Big Al Capone draws 10 years in prison for failing to file income tax returns on his illegal income. Big Bill Thompson, Chicago mayor whose picture hung on Capone's wall, is defeated by reform candidate Anton Cermak.
Sure that the days of the sharpshooters are over in this city on Lake Michigan.
Corrupt New York Mayor Jimmy Walker resigns and flees to Europe, leaving Costello with fewer open palms at City Hall. In New York, Luciano and his associates brace for what they know is coming.
New York sounds the final doom of the slot machine as Mayor LaGuardia leads in the destruction of 1,500 confiscated coin snatchers.
And let this be noticed to the gamblers, tin horns, racketeers, and gangsters that they've got to keep out of New York City.
Off to a briny grave goes a $200,000 cargo, the last of a racket that once brought the underworld $4 million a month.
In the wave of reform under new Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, New York City and the nation witness a string of prosecutions which threatens Luciano's national syndicate. LaGuardia appoints former United States Attorney Thomas E. Dewey as special prosecutor. His first target is Arthur Flegenheimer, better known as Dutch Schultz. The Dutchman has been the volatile king of the Bronx since the dawn of Prohibition. Impulsive and hot-headed, he kills easily. Dewey amasses evidence to indict Schultz for murder and restaurant racketeering. Schultz fights back. He hires hitman Albert Anastasia to kill Dewey. But Anastasia first tells Luciano about the contract. It violates a principal syndicate rule. We didn't kill nobody but our own guys, Luciano says, and we never made a hit without a unanimous vote of everybody on the council. Outsiders were strictly out of bounds. But laws need enforcement. The enforcers are almost all Jewish hitmen. Bugsy Siegel is Luciano's liaison to the group. It is headed by Louis Lepke Buchholder, a cool killer who controls New York's garment district for Luciano. Radio columnist Walter Winchell later names the group Murder Incorporated. At a council meeting called by Luciano, Lepke calmly says, "I move we take steps to protect Dewey's life." For violating the rules, the council votes to kill Schultz before he can kill Dewey. But Lansky warns Luciano, if Dutch is eliminated, you're going to stand out like a naked guy who just lost his clothes. It's 10-1 they'll be after you next. On October 23, 1935, Schultz and 3 of his men are shot down in the Palace Chop House and Tavern in Newark. It is the bloodiest day since the St. Valentine's Day Massacre of 1929. But Lansky's prediction holds true. Dewey targets Luciano and convicts him of compulsory prostitution.
Charlie Lucky Luciano, shackled to his henchman, the overlord of a $12 million a year vice ring, goes to prison for from 30 to 50 years. At Sing Sing, the droopy-eyed gang leader gets his last glimpse of the outside world for many years. When he comes out, he'll be an old man. New York's big shot is now just prisoner number 92168. The lowest form of racketeering has been given a death blow, and Lucky is lucky no more.
Dewey sees the conviction as a victory against all of organized crime.
The members of the jury are entitled to the thanks of the whole community. By their verdict, they have reasserted the ability of democracy to clean its own house and cast out those who betray it.
Luciano still controls his creation from his prison cell in New York, but his key personnel relocate to avoid heat from Dewey. Lansky sets up carpet joint casinos in Havana, Cuba, and Hollandale, Florida. Costello follows suit with casinos in New Orleans. In 1936, Bugsy Siegel joins the exodus. He leaves his wife and 2 daughters in their Scarsdale mansion for a business trip to Hollywood. Siegel's task is to take over and expand West Coast gambling for the syndicate. He wants more facilities to attract richer bettors, namely Hollywood's elite. Siegel reacquaints himself with actor George Raft, who grew up a tough Jew in New York's Irish Hell's Kitchen. He knows Siegel from the speakeasy circuit of Prohibition days. Raft makes it big in Hollywood with his role as a coin-flipping gangster in Scarface, the 1930 version of Capone's story and Hollywood's first in a spate of mob-inspired films. Raft is no mobster, but he becomes Siegel's friend, and he provides Siegel entree to Hollywood's upper crust. Siegel hones his already flamboyant image into that of Raft, often dressing in his style. Raft is noted for class. Without class and style, a man's a bum, says Siegel. He might as well be dead. A string of well-publicized affairs with Hollywood notables sees him labeled a wealthy sportsman in gossip columns. He keeps company with actresses Wendy Berry and Marie the Body McDonald. Always mixing business with pleasure, Siegel meets Willie Beoff, the Chicago syndicate man controlling the film industry's projectionist and craft union, IATSE. Siegel charms his way into control of the Extras Guild. At Ciro's, the Mogambo, Earl Carroll's Theater, and more, he wines and dines actors, actresses, and studio executives. He expands bookmaking operations and finances the Rex, a luxurious offshore gambling ship. His new Hollywood associates spend big money at the haunts of their mysterious sportsman friend. But a long-term affair with the Countess Dorothy de Frazzo of Italy threatens Siegel's usefulness to the syndicate. When a treasure-hunting voyage with her aboard a schooner full of Hollywood notables runs into trouble off the shore of Costa Rica, the Los Angeles Examiner dubs it the Ship of Fools, and Siegel's name and background are publicized. This alarms Lansky. Lansky visits Luciano in prison, April 1937. Benny's no movie star, and he's beginning to act like one, he tells Luciano. He's really playing the part of a Hollywood big shot, and that's no good for a guy who's supposed to be handling our private business. On November 22nd, 1939, Siegel executes some business for the outfit. Murder Incorporated hitman Harry Big Greenie Greenberg is shot to death outside his Los Angeles apartment. He has threatened to turn state's evidence against his boss, Louis Lepke, then the top target of Dewey. The hit squad comprises Siegel, Frankie Carbo, Whitey Krakauer, and Allie Tannenbaum. Shortly thereafter, Siegel's private business becomes very public. After the killing, Lepke surrenders to J. Edgar Hoover on a federal narcotics charge, hoping to avoid Dewey and indictments for Murder Incorporated killings in New York. But unrelenting pressure cracks two of his top killers, Abe Rellis and Allie Tannenbaum. They name Siegel in the death of Greenberg. Siegel is repeatedly indicted and finally tried, but all charges are dropped time after time. Bribes account for some of this. A mysterious plunge by Abe Rellis out of a 6-story window in New York while under police guard finalizes Siegel's release. Siegel's lawyer, Jerry Geisler, explains that the testimony of a self-confessed participant such as Tannenbaum is not sufficient corroboration. Since only Abe Rellis could have provided such evidence, and he is now dead, the judge dismisses all charges against Siegel. Lepke is not so fortunate. Since 1930, he has ordered more than 200 grisly executions to enforce Luciano's syndicate rules. Tannenbaum's evidence convicts him of one of these murders. He is electrocuted. Murder Incorporated's reign of terror ends, but its legacy lingers. Widespread publicity hurts Siegel. Although his friend Raft remains true, Siegel's cover is blown. He is no longer as attractive to the Hollywood set. More anti-mob publicity follows conviction of IATSE extortionist Willie Beoff, who draws 10 years in prison. To avoid the heat, Siegel shifts his attention slightly east. Siegel visits the desert town of Las Vegas in 1941 to push the syndicate's horse racing wire service on the Sawdust Joint casinos. The town of 8,000 supports workers from nearby Hoover Dam and train passengers, plus automobile traffic on Highway 91 to Los Angeles. It occurs to Siegel that gambling is legal, but not highly promoted. The resort casinos on the highway just beyond the city limits have an Old West flavor, but the Last Frontier Hotel and the El Rancho do not attract high rollers. At some point in this period, Siegel becomes obsessed with building a Pleasure Palace casino appealing to big spenders and owned by the outfit. But World War II interrupts his plans. Ration stamps are required to buy gasoline, meat, tires, and luxury items like women's hosiery. As during Prohibition, the underworld supplies public demand. It sells stamps stolen from government depots, bought from bribed officials or counterfeited. The syndicate also creates a black market for rationed goods. The meat industry falls under mob influence. They take over hundreds of gas stations that never seem to run dry, always have tires, and never ask for ration stamps. The liner SS Normandy burns at her dock early in 1942 while being converted to transport troops. Nazi sabotage is suspected. Through Lansky, the Navy Department asks Luciano's help from prison in protecting the docks, whose workers are acknowledged as under mob control. Luciano agrees, and there are no more acts of sabotage. When the Allies invade Sicily and then Italy in 1943, Mafia clan gunmen provide maps, guides, and scouting assistance. Luciano is assumed to have provided Italian contacts. With war's end in 1945, Luciano is released from prison as a thank you, but deported to Italy. Costello, Lansky, and Siegel see him off with a party, and Lansky secures the final okay to finance Siegel's Las Vegas casino. The budget is pegged at $1 million. Groundbreaking is December 1945. Del Webb heads construction of what develops into a hot pink pleasure palace in the Nevada desert. Siegel names the casino the Flamingo, after his mistress of several years, Virginia Hill. Known variously as Flamingo, Sugar Hill, and Queen of the Mafia, Virginia meets Siegel as an actress. Previously, she plies the underworld in affairs with Costello, Luciano associate Joe Adonis, and various Capone successors in Chicago. She also runs money for the outfit. As Siegel's interior decorator, her tastes exceed his finances. As the price tag soars to $4 million over budget, Siegel worries. The hotel won't be finished, only the casino by opening night of December 26th, the worst show business draw night of the year. But George Raft has agreed to get Hollywood stars to fly in on planes chartered by Siegel. Siegel mounts a publicity campaign based on attendance of these stars. He hires the best talent available for opening night, the hot Latin sounds of Xavier Cugat with Jimmy Durante on stage. Throughout it all, Virginia Hill decorates and writes the checks. Some of them bounce. On edge, Siegel must now pay Webb in cash to keep the workers on the job. While picking up the payroll one night, Siegel tells Webb that he has personally killed 12 men, but then adds, laughing, that Webb has nothing to worry about. There's no chance that you'll get killed, he says. We only kill each other. Siegel gets more money by juggling stocks and selling off syndicate assets such as the Rex, but time is running out. Over Christmas in 1946, Luciano holds a national meeting in Havana, Cuba, where Lansky maintains a casino. Siegel is not invited. He is under suspicion. Lansky painfully relates that a Swiss bank source reports an account in Virginia Hill's name with $600,000 in it. There's only one thing to do with a thief who steals from his friends, he announces. Benny's got to be hit. But the mob waits. On opening night, it rains in Los Angeles. The worst downpour in 30 years grounds Siegel's airlift of stars. The Flamingo is nearly empty. Few notable patrons arrive other than his pal Raft. Business is dismal, and reports to Havana are bad. By late January, the Flamingo loses $500,000. Siegel shuts it down. He scrambles for even more money to complete the hotel, borrowing $100,000 from Raft on only a handshake. He reopens in March 1947. Now the gamblers have a place to stay. They play back their winnings. The Flamingo shows a slim profit by June. It isn't enough. In Havana, Luciano observed that if the Flamingo was a success, Siegel could repay the stolen money and not have to die. Benny had been a valuable guy for a long time, from the beginning, so none of us really wanted to see him get it, he says. But if the Flamingo was a flop, well, that'd be it for him. In Hollywood, Siegel stays at the home of Virginia Hill, away on business. While reading a newspaper, Siegel dies in a burst from an M1 carbine. Gambling associate Alan Smiley escapes death by diving to the floor at the first shot, which hits Siegel in the head. As far as I'm concerned, he was a wonderful guy, Raft says. Benny had a temper, but who doesn't? Raft's hope of ever seeing the return of his $100,000 dies with Siegel, but Raft misses his friend. Virginia Hill flees to Paris, where she tries to kill herself with pills. To this day, some say Hill stole the money on her own and blamed herself for Siegel's death. Morticians are his pallbearers. Only Siegel's ex-wife, Estelle, and 2 teenage daughters, Millicent and Barbara, attend his Los Angeles funeral. But Siegel's scheme is not buried with him. After World War II, America wants to play. As Bugsy Siegel predicted, Las Vegas becomes a boom town for tourists and the mob. Lansky and Costello helped finance at least 6 casinos by the early 1950s, including the now successful Flamingo. Although Luciano exercises some control from Italy, the advent of television focuses the light of day on his once secretive syndicate. The outfit writhes and squirms under hot lights and cameras, drawn by the Senate's organized crime investigator, Estes Kefauver. Virtually everyone in the mob is forced to testify. Costello, fearing exposure of his face will ruin his reputation, forbids it. The cameras show only his nervous, fidgeting hands to TV viewers, an indictment in itself. Now married and a mother, a more plump Virginia Hill puts on her best performance as a naive party girl who never asks questions and just wants fun.
Well, I worked for a while. Then the men I was around that gave me things were not gangsters or racketeers or whatever you call these other people. The only time I ever got anything from them was going out and having fun and maybe a few presents.
Luciano wants Hill killed before she can testify, but the many mobsters who had affairs with her convince him otherwise. Besides, Lansky wanted to get his hands on that dough in Switzerland.
Did you ever, get any money from Maya Lansky?
I never got money from any of those fellas.
None of those fellas?
None of those fellas. None of these that I've been reading about, or none that I knew. They never gave me anything.
In return for her performance, Hill is allowed to keep some of the money. Most, she deposits into Lansky's treasury in New York. In March 1966, she takes pills, walks into an Austrian snowbank, and dies. What started out as a tightly knit outfit doing business on the streets of New York reverts to its clannish, ethnic warring elements. Siegel is dead. Costello goes to jail briefly for tax evasion on his Las Vegas casinos. He is wounded upon release by a rival and retires. He dies in 1973. Lansky operates casinos in Florida and Havana until the Cuban Revolution. The Las Vegas casinos, financed by the syndicate, are sold in the mid-1950s due to new regulations and growing journalistic attention. Lansky retires as chairman of the syndicate and dies in 1983. Luciano's overhaul organization survives to this day, with new names and old jobs, but it has withered under media scrutiny and unrelenting federal and state pressure. As Luciano says, the last thing you want to do is call attention to yourself. He dies of a heart attack in Italy in 1963. Luciano collapses at an airport while meeting a film producer about the story of his outfit. Shortly before his death, Luciano was asked if he repented his life of crime. "I do the same thing all over again, only I do it legal," he replies. "I learned too late that you need just as good a brain to make a crooked million as you need to make an honest million. These days you apply for a license to steal from the public. If I had the time again, I'd make damn sure I got that license."
Gangsters lead a hard, mean, ugly life. There is no romance or glamour in it. The lives of all gang members always end in one of three ways: death by police bullets, death at the hands of other gangsters, or imprisonment in the penitentiary.
What advice have you for other girls who are tempted?
I'd advise them to live good, clean lives and obey their parents' wishes.
Well, Mother, what have you got to say?
Oh, I'm the happiest woman in the world today that I have Marion back with me. I prayed night and day to have her with me for Christmas, and God has answered my prayer.